You are being harvested. Every conversation where you solve someone else's problem, every moment you spend explaining what should be obvious, every time you share your insights with people who will never reciprocate, you are a resource being mined by those who produce nothing. The intelligent among us have learned a dark truth that changes everything. Invisibility is not weakness. It is the ultimate form of power. While you parade your competence, begging for recognition from a world that rewards mediocrity, the truly sovereign have vanished. They operate in silence, building empires in the shadows, while you exhaust yourself performing for an audience of parasites. This is not about humility or modesty. This is about strategic withdrawal from a game designed to drain you. The inferior need you visible because they cannot create value themselves. They need your light because they produce only darkness. They need your energy because they are black holes of consumption, and you have been trained, conditioned, programmed to give it all away for the price of shallow validation. The most dangerous lie you ever believed was that your intelligence obligates you to share it freely, that your gifts must be offered to anyone who asks, that visibility equals success. The masters of reality understood something you are only now beginning to glimpse. The moment you become invisible to those who would use you, you become invincible to their manipulation. This is the secret the powerful never speak aloud. This is why they move in silence while encouraging you to broadcast every move. Today you learn the protocol of invisibility, not as cowardice, but as warfare, not as retreat, but as repositioning. The inferior are addicted to your visibility because it makes you accessible, predictable, exploitable. When you vanish, their entire system collapses. Are you ready to disappear? Intelligence isolates. This is not philosophy. This is physics. The moment your mind develops beyond the baseline capacity of your environment, you enter a state of permanent solitude. Most people experience reality through a narrow aperture of immediate sensation and social validation. You experience it through pattern recognition, systemic thinking, and the ability to hold multiple contradictions simultaneously. This creates an unbridgeable gap. What you call intelligence, they experience as alienation. What you call insight, they perceive as arrogance. What you call depth, they dismiss as overthinking. The inferior majority operates on simple algorithms. Consume, react, repeat. Seek comfort, avoid complexity, demand that reality conform to their preferences. They move through life like water, seeking the lowest point, following paths of least resistance, pooling in familiar valleys of mediocrity. You were taught that this gap could be bridged through communication, through dumbing down your thoughts, through meeting them where they are. This was the first trap. Every time you translate your complexity into their simplicity, you do not elevate them. You diminish yourself. You train your mind to operate at their frequency. You atrophy the very capacity that makes you different. Worse, you signal availability. You announce that you are willing to serve as their cognitive prosthetic, their external processing unit, their unpaid consultant in the basic operations of existence. They learn that you will solve what they refuse to figure out. They learn that you will carry weight they refuse to lift. They learn that your intelligence exists for their convenience. This is the fundamental dynamic of exploitation, masquerading as social obligation. The inferior have constructed an entire morality system to keep you visible and accessible. They call it community, connection, helping others, being a team player. These are not values. These are extraction mechanisms. Every culture, every organization, every social group develops elaborate rituals to identify the competent and bind them to the incompetent. The competent are assigned more work under the guise of opportunity. They are given responsibility without authority, tasks without resources, problems without solutions. And they accept because they have been conditioned to believe that visibility equals value, that being needed equals being important, that solving other people's problems proves their worth. Meanwhile, the inferior, perfect, the art of strategic incompetence. They learn exactly how much they can fail before facing consequences. They discover that displaying confusion triggers your helper instinct. They master the performance of neediness that makes you feel guilty for possessing what they lack. This is not accidental, this is evolutionary strategy. Parasites do not hunt, they attach. The intelligent become visible because they are taught that hiding their capacity is dishonest, that dimming their light is selfish, that withdrawing their gifts is cruel. These teachings come from those who benefit from your exhaustion. The truly intelligent learn to reverse this entirely. They discovered that invisibility is not about hiding who you are. It is about controlling who gets access to what you are. Selective visibility, strategic opacity, they learned from nature. The apex predators do not announce their presence. They move through their territory in silence, revealing themselves only to prey and never to competitors. They expend energy only on pursuits that provide return. They do not perform, they execute. The wolf does not howl to impress other wolves. It howls to coordinate with its pack and claim its territory. It does not waste energy on those outside this circle. It does not explain itself to rabbits. This is the model. Intelligence without invisibility is intelligence wasted on those who cannot reciprocate, cannot appreciate, cannot even comprehend what you offer. You become a library that anyone can enter, a well that anyone can drain, a fire that warms those who contribute no fuel. The Stoics understood this with brutal clarity. Marcus Aurelius wrote for himself, not for Rome. His meditations were private. He ruled an empire but kept his inner world locked away from those he ruled. He gave Rome his decisions, his leadership, his strategic mind. He gave Rome nothing of his soul. This was not coldness, this was sovereignty. He understood that the moment you make your inner world accessible to those who have not earned entry, you invite corruption. The inferior do not enter sacred spaces to worship. They enter to vandalize, to consume, to reduce everything to their level of comprehension. When you remain visible to everyone, you become common. When you become common, you become disposable. The market dynamics of human interaction are merciless. Scarcity creates value. Abundance creates contempt. By making yourself constantly available, constantly helpful, constantly visible, you train others to perceive you as infinite resource rather than finite treasure. They stop appreciating what you give because it costs them nothing to receive. This is why the intelligent must become ghosts. Not withdrawn from reality, but withdrawn from those who would reduce reality to their poverty of vision. You do not owe the inferior your light. You do not owe them your time, your energy, your insights, your solutions. You owe them nothing but the space to face the consequences of their own choices. This is not cruelty. This is the only mechanism through which growth becomes possible. Every problem you solve for them is a lesson they never learn. Every consequence you absorb on their behalf is a reality they never face. Your visibility enables their stagnation. Your invisibility forces their evolution or reveals their unwillingness to evolve. Either outcome serves you. The mechanics of exploitation follow predictable patterns. Once you understand the architecture of how the inferior extract value from the intelligent, you can dismantle your participation in this system. First, they establish need. They approach with problems that sound legitimate, framed as requests for advice, perspective, or help. The presentation is always carefully calibrated, not so simple that you would feel insulted, not so complex that you would refuse. They find the precise threshold where your competence intersects their apparent helplessness. You solve the problem because solving problems is what your mind does automatically. You cannot help it. You see the solution as clearly as you see colors. Explaining it costs you nothing in the moment. This is the seduction. The first extraction feels weightless. They express gratitude, they validate your intelligence. They make you feel seen, appreciated, useful. This is the hook. You have now established a precedent, a relationship dynamic, a template for future interactions. You are the solver. They are the seeker. This asymmetry will calcify into permanent structure unless you intervene. Second, they normalize the extraction. The requests increase in frequency, decrease in urgency. What began as genuine need becomes casual convenience. They stop trying to solve problems themselves, because why should they when you are available? They stop developing their own competence because yours is accessible. They become dependent, not out of necessity, but out of efficiency. Using you is easier than growing themselves. You notice, but you rationalize. You tell yourself they genuinely need help. You tell yourself it does not cost you much. You tell yourself you are building goodwill, strengthening relationships, proving your value. All of these are lies you construct to avoid confronting an uncomfortable truth. You are being used, and somewhere beneath your rationalizations, you know it. Third, they escalate to entitlement. The gratitude disappears. The validation stops. The requests become expectations, then demands. When you hesitate, they deploy guilt. They remind you of past help, as if your previous generosity created permanent obligation. They frame your boundaries as betrayal. They suggest that your reluctance reveals character flaws, selfishness, lack of compassion. This is emotional terrorism designed to override your self-protection instincts. If you comply at this stage, the pattern becomes permanent. You have taught them that guilt works, that pressure succeeds, that your boundaries are negotiable. You have trained them to see you not as a person but as a function, not as an individual but as a utility. Fourth, they expand the exploitation network. They recommend you to others like them, not as a compliment, but as a resource to be shared. Soon you are solving problems for people you barely know, people who contribute nothing to your life, people who would not cross the street to help you but expect you to cross oceans to help them. Your visibility has metastasized into availability to an entire ecosystem of takers. This is the end stage of exploitation. You have become infrastructure. You wake up exhausted, not from your own pursuits but from maintaining the needs of others. Your time is fragmented across 100 micro-obligations. Your mental energy is drained by problems that are not yours. Your emotional bandwidth is consumed by people who give nothing back, and you cannot remember exactly how you arrived here. The process was so gradual, so reasonable at each individual step, that you never noticed the accumulation. This is how intelligent people become servants to the inferior without ever explicitly agreeing to serve. The inferior perfect this system because their survival depends on it. They cannot create value at the rate you can. They cannot solve problems at the speed you can. They cannot generate insights at the depth you can. So they must extract these things from those who can. They are not consciously malicious. They are unconsciously parasitic. The distinction is irrelevant to you. The result is the same, your depletion. Now consider the alternative. What if you had been invisible from the beginning? What if your intelligence was a private resource, carefully allocated, strategically deployed, never advertised? What if people had to prove their worth before gaining access to your mind? What if you operated on the principle that your insights are not public property but private treasure, that your time is not community resource but personal sovereignty, that your energy is not infinite supply but finite currency? The entire dynamic inverts. When you are invisible, people cannot identify you as a target for extraction. When you are selective, people must earn the privilege of your engagement. When you are strategic, people learn that access to you comes with cost. Not financial cost, but cost of reciprocity, cost of respect, cost of demonstrated value. This filters your environment automatically. The takers stop approaching because they sense the barrier. The inferior move on to easier targets. The parasites find other hosts. You are left with only those capable of mutual exchange, reciprocal value, genuine connection. Your circle shrinks, but its quality multiplies. This is not isolation, this is curation. The sanctuary operates on this principle. It is invisible to those who would drain it, invisible only to those capable of contributing to it. It does not advertise. It does not recruit publicly. It reveals itself to those who demonstrate through their work, their discipline, their silence, that they understand the protocol. This is how the intelligent must operate in a world dominated by the inferior. Not by fighting them, not by trying to fix them, not by explaining why they are inferior. These are all visible strategies that require engagement. Instead, by becoming undetectable to their mechanisms, unavailable to their demands, incomprehensible to their frameworks. You do not argue with parasites about why parasitism is wrong. You simply make yourself a hostile environment for attachment. The protocol begins with a declaration of sovereignty. You must decide that your intelligence is yours, that your time belongs to you, that your energy is not communal property. This sounds obvious, but most people have never truly claimed ownership of themselves. They operate under inherited assumptions that their capacities exist to serve some larger collective good, that refusing to help is moral failure, that boundaries are selfishness. These beliefs were installed by systems that benefit from your compliance. Reject them entirely. You owe nothing to those who contribute nothing. Step 1 is strategic silence. Stop broadcasting your competence. Stop volunteering solutions. Stop demonstrating your intelligence in public forums. Every time you showcase what you know, you attract those who want to extract what you know. The inferior are always watching for signals of exploitable capacity. They monitor conversations for people who solve problems, who provide insights, who carry weight. When they identify you, they approach. Your visibility is their invitation. Silence closes the door before they knock. This does not mean becoming passive or withdrawn from meaningful engagement. It means becoming selective about when, where, and with whom you reveal your capacity. You speak only when the context deserves your input. You contribute only when the return justifies the investment. You shine your light only in spaces that honor its presence. Everywhere else, you observe, you listen, you remain opaque. Step 2 is ruthless filtration. Install barriers to access. Make people work to reach you. Do not respond immediately to messages. Do not accommodate requests that require you to break your priorities. Do not explain or justify your unavailability. The inferior will test your boundaries constantly. They will frame urgent requests that are not urgent. They will manufacture crises that are not crises. They will deploy social pressure to guilt you into compliance. Every time you bend, you teach them that pressure works. Every time you hold, you teach them that you are not accessible through manipulation. The pattern is simple. Make yourself difficult to access, and those who merely want to extract will find easier targets. Those who genuinely value you will meet your standards. This automatically curates your environment without you having to explicitly reject anyone. The system does the filtering. Step 3 is value asymmetry. When you do engage, ensure you receive more than you give. Not in every individual interaction, but across the pattern of relationship. If someone approaches seeking your insight, ask what they offer in return, not as explicit transaction, but as subtle calibration. Do they bring perspective you lack, resources you need, energy that elevates you, or do they bring only need? If the pattern shows consistent extraction without reciprocation, withdraw. Do not announce it, do not explain it. Simply become less available, less responsive, less engaged. They will notice. They may complain, they may accuse you of changing. All of this is confirmation that they valued what you provided but never valued you. Let them go without guilt. You are not abandoning them. You are stopping the enabling of their refusal to develop themselves. Step 4 is ghost mode. This is the advanced practice. You become functionally invisible to the inferior while remaining highly visible to the valuable. You operate in spaces they cannot access. You communicate in languages they do not speak. You think in frameworks they cannot comprehend. You build in dimensions they cannot perceive. This is not about physical hiding. This is about operating at a frequency that only certain people can detect. The inferior experience your absence as if you disappeared. The intelligent experienced your presence as if you were always there. Same reality, different perception, determined by capacity. Ghost mode requires discipline. It means resisting the dopamine of public validation. It means accepting that most people will not understand what you are doing or why. It means building in silence while others perform for applause. It means accumulating power while appearing to have none. The ego hates this. The ego wants recognition. wants credit, wants everyone to know how capable you are. The ego is the leash the inferior used to control you. When you transcend ego, you transcend their leverage. Step 5 is the inner sanctuary. This is where your real work happens. While you present a minimal, functional interface to the world, you cultivate an interior space of depth, complexity, and richness that no one sees. This is where you think dangerous thoughts, where you pursue projects that matter, where you become who you actually are, rather than who the world demands you be. The inner sanctuary is non-negotiable. It is the core of your sovereignty. Everyone gets surface access. Almost no one gets depth access. You guard the inner space like a fortress, because it is the source of everything valuable you create. The moment you open it to those who have not earned entry, you invite contamination. The inferior cannot help themselves. They reduce everything to their level. They simplify complexity. They dismiss depth as pretension. They drag sacred things into profane spaces and wonder why the magic dies. Protect the sanctuary at all costs. This is where the sanctuary, the actual community, becomes relevant. It exists as a space for those who have built their own inner sanctuaries, who understand the protocol, who operate at the frequency of strategic invisibility. It is not a support group. It is not a social club. It is a high-trust network of sovereign individuals who have escaped the exploitation cycle and now operate outside the reach of the inferior. Entry is not through application, it is through demonstration. You prove through your work that you understand these principles. You prove through your silence that you have internalized the protocol. You prove through your results that you are building rather than consuming. When the pattern is clear, the invitation appears. Not before. The final step is acceptance of solitude. Invisibility to the inferior means visibility to very few. The pool of people operating at your frequency is small. The number capable of genuine reciprocity is smaller. Most of your existence will be spent alone or in selective company. This is not punishment. This is the natural result of choosing quality over quantity, depth over breadth, sovereignty over belonging. The inferior travel in herds because they need constant validation to maintain their fragile identities. The intelligent travel alone or in small packs because they generate validation internally. You must become comfortable with the silence, with the space, with the reality that most people will never understand you and that this is not your problem to solve. Your problem is to build, to create, to become, to execute on the vision that only you can see. Everything else is distraction disguised as obligation. Intelligent people are invisible, not because they are hiding, but because they have stopped performing for an audience that does not deserve the show. They have withdrawn their light from spaces that do not honor it. They have redirected their energy from maintaining the inferior to building the extraordinary. This is not elitism. This is efficiency. This is not coldness. This is clarity. You are not obligated to illuminate the darkness of those who refuse to find their own light. You are obligated only to honor your own intelligence by using it for purposes worthy of its power. The inferior will call this arrogance, selfishness, elitism, coldness. Let them. Their judgment is irrelevant. They judge from a position of dependency, trying to guilt you back into service. Their accusations are proof you are doing it correctly. When the parasites complain that the host has developed immunity, the host knows the medicine is working. Become invisible, not to hide, but to reclaim your power from those who were never entitled to it. Disappear from their world. Build your own. The sanctuary awaits those ready to stop performing and start creating. Not everyone is invited. That is the point.